Again, if you have taken principles on macroeconomics with me, this will be a review for you. First of all, we want to talk about the free market in all economic system. And some of the questions that basically you want to address are, what are some of the products that we would produce, right? Any market, what are you producing? Come on, education, healthcare, t-shirt, textbook. How should it be produced has got something to do with market structure. Okay, is this under the market structure of perfect competition? Or is this under the market structure of monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition? We'll get to that in the next few chapters. For whom would it be produced? That's kind of like the customer. Who are the customers? Are you a household, or are you a government, or are you a industrial user? Are you a big end user, or are you a small end user? What exactly is a market? Market consists of two parties, buyers and sellers. That's it. If you only have buyers alone, you cannot call it a market. Likewise, if you only have sellers alone, you cannot call it a market. It has to a place where a transaction actually takes place. For example, we look at the price of pizza, gasoline products, or we can also look at the price and quantity of services like car wash, haircut, and so on. So once again, there's no way for you to be able to copy everything word for word because I got to move along. So if you have your book with you, please refer to it. Most of these are in your book. And you're welcome to print out the PowerPoint slides in advance and bring it to the class and add notes to it. That would be my suggestion. So next we want to talk about exactly what is demand curve and the law of demand. Now most of you by now would have got used to what is a graph. You got X and Y axis. So in economics, in a market, we usually get price on the Y axis or your vertical axis, and then we have Q, quantity in the horizontal axis. So in this case, we want to look at example for pizza. Okay. Now, a demand curve is basically, it looks like this. So this is the demand curve. The definition, you could find it in the book on page 77 of the book. Now, this is a demand curve, and again, how would you describe this red line? If I were to ask you to describe it, how would you describe it? You look at it and say, what? It is a straight line. I'm helping you. What else?
Downward sloping.
Very good. It is downward shape, sloping. Thank you, Mr. Kinsler, right?
Yeah.
This is demand curve. It is considered downward sloping because I may have said it in this class before. You're reading from left to right. Okay, so therefore the graph is downward sloping. So let's start with, let's say the price of pizza. Given that it is $4, you would demand 8 slices. Now, this is a situation in which you look at the demand and supply of pizza in the city of Chicago, which is a big city, so therefore the units are, thank you, therefore the units are in the thousands of slices per day that you sell. Maybe even more than that. But for the class of this size, we could just use units, maybe 8 units. As a matter of fact, I bought Domino pizza not long ago. I think it was 2 days ago. It was very good. I think Papa John's a little bit better. So now, if the prices drop down by $1 from $4 to $3, consumer mentality is, oh, it is cheaper now, so I would like to buy. Is it more or less? More, yes. So therefore, yeah, at this point, let's call this point B. So you're moving from one point to another along the same demand curve. We call it movement along the line. Okay, the demand curve actually. Okay, so then you would demand more, which is 12. So as I always like to say, if they drop the price further to $2, you have your pizza party, do not forget your professor. Invite her as well. So now you're willing to buy even more slices. from 12 to 16. Okay, so what does the law of demand say? Look at your textbook. Could somebody read it to me if you find it? You have your book? Eden, do you want to read it? Law of demand.
I don't see the definition for law of demand, but I do see the definition.
Page 77 on the side. Oh, I see. Okay. You see the definition for demand curve, but not the law of demand. Let's turn to page, see if it is on the next page. Okay, not really. All right, I think it's there somewhere. So let me go back there. Okay, that's all right. We'll come back later. The law of demand. This is what the law of demand say. If the price of a good goes down, which is this case from $4 to $3 to $2, then your quantity demanded goes up. This is my notation for quantity demanded, and vice versa. What is vice versa? Anybody?
The opposite.
Opposite, yes. Would you be explicitly state the opposite in this context? Ruben, you want to try?
Didn't get the question.
Do you want to state what is vice versa explicitly?
Yeah, it's just as the price goes up, demand goes down.
Okay, Chris, again?
As the price goes up, the demand goes down.
Very good. As the price goes up, I want you to modify your language. The quantity demanded goes up. Okay. Goes down. The opposite. So they move in the opposite direction. See, one is down, one is up. Everybody got it? Vice versa means the other. State it the other way. So if the price goes up, quantity demanded comes down. Makes sense. So now I want you to pay attention that P and Q, you should write this down in your notes, are negatively related. Or the word we use in inversely related. Okay, so pay attention to that. So, therefore the demand curve is downward sloping. So what this is saying is because of the law of demand, you move from point A to point B as your price drops, and then your quantity demanded will go up, moving from left to right and to right. So this is called the law of demand. Okay, so how do you explain the law of demand? There are two theories behind it. This should be in your book on the same page under demand curve, page 77. So the two theories behind it is, the first theory say, this is because of what we call substitution effect. Now, let's look at substitutes like Coke and Pepsi. Would you agree that that's a good substitute for each other? So how many of you prefer Coke? I do too. How many of you prefer Pepsi? Okay, some of you do. So they are pretty good substitute for one another. So basically, if the price of Coke comes down, you buy less of Coke, you go for the substitute, you buy more of Pepsi. So that sort of explains the law of demand. The second one is an income effect. Income effect has got something to do with your purchasing power. So what happened is, let's say if you drive by McDonald's, you're gonna buy a Big Mac. I mean, a Big Mac usually costs what is it, $2.50 something like that?
Yeah.
About there. Okay. So let's just say today you go by and it's they drop it down to 95 cents. So that's pretty good. So you feel rich. You feel like, oh, suddenly, your purchasing power has gone up. Have you ever felt that way? You're like, oh yeah, I'm rich. It's not because you're rich, but it makes you feel rich because the price has dropped. So therefore you buy more of it. So we're coming back to this later. So that's known as income effects. So we use these two effects to explain the law of demand. Next, I want to go on and talk about the fact that there are two types of reservation prices. Let me write it on the side here. And I really appreciate this big whiteboard, so I can write more. So it's buyers, reservation price, and then it's the sellers, reservation price. Now, I want you to pay attention there. When we talk in terms of buyer's reservation price, we speak in terms of a maximum price, not a minimum. Okay, there are two. So when you talk about buyer's reservation price, you and me are consumers. We're talking about the largest dollar amount, or another term I use here is maximum amount, that you are willing to pay. Okay, remember that's your benefit side, because we did that example from chapter 1. For an additional unit generally equal to marginal benefit. Okay, so I'm defining the term marginal benefit now. You see the 5 stars? Extremely important concept in economics. Every time you hear the term marginal, it's very important. So you got a Hilton here, very important concept. And in fact, we asked you to calculate that in one of the test questions, right? Marginal cost. So you got marginal benefit as well. So what exactly is the term marginal mean? It means extra. The next, the addition. So therefore we underline the word additional units. So let's look at the definition. The increase in total benefit that results from carrying one additional unit of the activity. Now for this class, you have already done that example. Remember this one? Marginal benefit of 1 is total benefit of 1 unit minus total benefit of 0 unit, and so on and so forth. Right? So you have TB2 minus TB1 and so on. So now, the term that I want to focus on is a maximum price, the largest dollar amount. So if you want to buy, if you're a consumer, you're buying something, it doesn't make sense to talk in terms of minimum, but more, it makes sense to talk about maximum. If you go to Macy's today, you want to buy a pretty dress. What is your reservation price? Come on, ladies. Give me a price. What's your reservation price?
What?
A dress? If you want to buy a nice dress from Macy's, how much are you willing to pay, Miss Snyder? Sorry?
70.
70? Okay, very good. What about guys? Buying for your girlfriend, maybe? How much are you willing to pay? Don't be cheap. Come on.
$200.
What?
About 100?
Smooth though.
Nice guy.
Better not. Come on, man.
100, okay. He's willing to
$200
pay
without tax.
Oh,
All right, so never mind. Let's just take a number. Let's take 100.
jump from 70
Okay.
to 100.
Someone is willing to. Hey, well, here's our chance. You know, to be rich. Why not? In economics class, we can always imagine. We can always dream. Someday it will come true. There's nothing wrong with that. We take $100. Yes. Okay, so if you walk up to the Macy's and then you tell the lady, you say, oh, by the way, my minimum price that I'm willing to pay is 100. Is there anything wrong with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Let's point out what's wrong with that.
Minimum?
If you say minimum you're willing to pay is $100, she's gonna show you all this expensive, top of the line thing that costs like 1,000, a few hundred, and say, well, you say minimum. Of course, you could afford the 1,000, 2,000 dress like the Queen of England wear and the First Lady or what have you. So it doesn't make sense to talk in terms of minimum price. As a buyer, you say the maximum I'm willing to pay is $100. So if you walk into a store, the price tag is 120. What would you do?
Buy it.
Turn away.
No, turn away. No, don't buy it. We just say the maximum price is $100. Don't. You are irrational. We're in economics class. Do we have to go back to chapter 1? Okay, Chris, turn away and say, oh, no way, unless you drop the price. Yeah. But if it is $99, would you buy it?
Yeah.
If your reservation price is 100, if you're a rational consumer, yes, you buy it. Why fight for that $1? I mean, come on. Yeah, buy it. So that's what it means there. Now, in your textbook, a lot of time, it equates your demand curve with your marginal benefit. So go ahead and add it on. So that's what it means there. Now, let's move on to supply curve. Supply curve is the opposite. In the case of supply curve, it moves the other way. Okay, and get the shift. a little bit. In the case of supply curve, you have the line going up like that, which is your supply curve. I'm gonna use SS to stand for, equate for supply. So again, given a price, how much are you willing to supply? Now, we look at the supplier for supply and demand for pizza market. A supplier means you are a seller of pizza. You are Domino, you are Papa John's, you are Pizza Hut. That's you. You're the producer. So you're gonna talk to yourself in your store. You say, oh, if it is $2, I'm willing to supply 8 units. So this is your 8. Instead of from top down, now you're moving up. I mean, in this example I gave. So if it is $3, you're in point B and you're willing to supply more. And if it's $4, you're at point C, you're willing to supply 16. So in other words, as the price goes up, you can redraw the diagram, probably better. Don't mark on the first one you had. So therefore, the law of supply say, as the price comes down, the quantity supply comes down as well. Or vice versa, which is the example we did, as the price goes up, the quantity supply. Be sure to change it goes up. Okay? Now it makes sense. If you're gonna charge a higher price, or if the market price is higher, you have more incentive to supply more units. Make sense? Why is that?
Should make more money.
More money, very good. Higher revenue, we don't know about profit, but higher revenue for sure. So the vice versa means as the price goes up, you're willing to supply more and more units. So it moves up from point A to point B to point C. Again, this is movement along the supply curve. In this case, the P and Q are positively related. They move in the same direction or directly related. Okay, very good. Let's go back to so in other words, we describe a supply curve as reading from left to right, as upward sloping instead of downward sloping. See the difference? Do not get it too confused. You will not pass this course. Please, I've already seen some of the students, my previous students' homework. Supply curve is upward sloping, demand curve is downward sloping. Do not ever get the two confused or mislabel them. You will not pass this course because it's so fundamental. We can't even go further. So let's go back to law of supply first. Okay, so supply curve is given a price and then you show how much you're willing to sell. So sellers must receive a higher, not lower price to produce additional unit of product to cover the higher opportunity cost of each additional unit. So what it is saying is this is actually your marginal cost. As the price goes up, you're willing to make a little bit more effort to produce a higher quantity, willing to supply more quantity. Okay, we call it quantity supplied, past tense. So therefore, what we say here is you're basically talking about marginal cost. Your opportunity cost is higher. So marginal cost, remember we have 5 stars, and in this textbook it equates your supply curve with your marginal cost. And we know the definition from chapter 1. Remember that one? We asked you that on the test as well. So that will be your marginal cost. You can change all the B to C. Of 1 unit will be total cost of 1 unit minus total cost of 0 unit, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's come back to this reservation price. Remember I said there are 2 different types of reservation price. One is buyers, one is sellers. So in the case of seller's reservation price, it should be the minimum price, not the maximum. So now we use the term the smallest dollar amount for which a seller would be willing to sell an additional unit, generally equal to marginal cost. So this is like you wanted to drop this class so bad. Imagine that's you. I know maybe that's not you. So you want to sell your textbook to to somebody else. You know, you want to drop this class. So, how much are you willing to let go of your textbook?
55.
Okay, 55. I'll take 55. So then you would say that's the minimum price that I'm willing to let go. You wouldn't say maximum price, right? As a seller, because it doesn't make sense. Now, if a buyer comes along and want to buy it and say, "Oh, by the way, my reservation price is 66," and you're willing to offer what, 55, right? Okay, so is that a sale?
Yeah.
Yeah. You pocket the profit because it's above your reservation price. Yahoo! Go ahead and get it. Take it. But if he comes along and say, my reservation price, a maximum price, a buyer is talking now. Maximum price I'm willing to pay is $40. So what happened?
Barter.
Yeah, there's no sale, right? You have to move on to the next stage of market, which is known as the art of negotiation. Haggling the price. So you might stand your ground and say, "Oh yeah, 55 is all that I do." You know, look at all the highlights I have in Dr. Gunn's class. You know, look at all the notes. You know, I mean, this is valuable. 55 is 55. That's it. And then they say, "Oh no." And the buyer might budge a little bit and might say, "Well, okay, the most I'm willing to pay is 45." What about you? Then you have to make another decision. Okay, 50. The other one say 47. You say 48. The other one say 47 and 25 cents sold. Okay, so there is a market going on because there is a sales going on. When I say sales, I'm not talking about Macy's or Belka sales. I'm talking about is something actually happened. The buyers and sellers are happy. They reach an agreement. This is known as equilibrium. And again, equilibrium is like the term marginal. It is so important in economics. If you pursue your PhD in economics someday, there's a class that asks you to prove equilibrium equals efficiency and vice versa. And that's a whole semester class, you know. You have to mathematically prove it. So in other words now, this is a demand, this is a supply. Let's use that textbook as an example. And a while ago we say, how much was it? Did anybody remember? The agreed price? Was it $47 and 25 cents? Oh, some of you have good memory. Very good. So that's your so-called P star. P star in English is equilibrium. Please write this down. Price. Equilibrium. Now there's an equilibrium now because there is a demand, there's a supply intersecting. At this point A, we have a happy face. Why happy face? A happy face means both parties are happy, they come to an agreement. This is a quantity of textbook and it could be you're selling 2. Or it could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 10, or it could be 10 minutes. So this is a price and quantity. So at point A, we call this equilibrium. Now, equilibrium means quantity demanded equals quantity supply. The same language of what we used earlier for demand curve and supply curve. So now you could call it a market. But a while ago, when you were talking to yourself in your dormitory room, you say, oh, if the pizza price is $4, I'll buy 12. If it is 2, I'll buy 16. You know, you were all talking to yourself. There's only the demand side, buyer side, but no supplier. And likewise, a producer of a pizza is talking in his Pizza Hut store by himself. If it is $5, I'll supply such and such unit. But there was no market because both parties have to meet together in order for something to happen. We call that transaction has taken place. That's your equilibrium. So right there is your equilibrium price. The star here or asterisk in economics we usually use that to denote equilibrium. So down here, this is your Q star. Okay, so Q star will be your equilibrium quantity. There's no magic number for that equilibrium quantity, but basically where equilibrium price is correspond to that equilibrium price is your equilibrium quantity. And that point is equilibrium. So let's come back to the word equilibrium. A system is in equilibrium when there's no tendency for it to change. So what are some of the synonymous terms that you could use to describe the term equilibrium? Think of some other alternative words.
Balanced.
Balance is a good term. Let's use that. What else? Okay, very good. How did I use that term? How about another term starts with S? T.
Stationary.
It's not St. Patrick's. Come on.
Stable.
Stable.
Very good. Stability. Okay. Okay, stability means everybody's happy. There's no tendency for it to move away from it. In other words, you see this force is going this direction, you know, everything converges into that circle. That's your equilibrium. And one of my favorite example is when you were young, most of you have gone to the playground, and how many of you have been on seesaw? You remember the experience? If someone who is about the same weight as you got on the other side, what happened?
No.
Well, let's do the easy one. If someone is heavier than you, what happened? Who is up in the air?
You are.
You are. If you're heavier, you're at the bottom, right? If you're more or less the same weight, what happened?
Going nowhere.
Yeah, like that. You balance. Both of you are up in the air because until someone cheats, you know, and I don't know how they cheat. Right? Throw me a 5 pounds weight or something, and then you drop, you know. So hey, that's balance. That's equilibrium, basically. So what is market equilibrium? That's when buyers and sellers are happy, or if you use the term satisfied. Happy with what? The price you agree on, which we call equilibrium price, and the equilibrium quantity. So that's what it is. Okay, now it's very common that you see a diagram like that in economics, so be sure you could do it, because this is the first step. We'll do a lot of graph for this class, you know, this chapter. So be sure you do it with me, because I'm trying to remember if there's a homework based on this chapter. It might be. Okay, supply and demand. So demand is downward sloping, the red one. Supply curve is upward sloping, the green one. So where the two intersect here is your equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so in this case, the equilibrium quantity is how much?
12.
What's the equilibrium quantity? 12,000 slices of pizza. Okay, very good. So the equilibrium price is $3. I'm going to skip we could do this exercise and see if you understand. So 4 columns here, the first 2 columns refer to the buyer side because these are demand. The last 2 columns refer to seller side because these are referring to the supply curve. So watch this. As the price goes up, you're less and less willing to buy. The quantity demand that comes down, right? Laws of demand. What about here? The price goes up same way, 1 to 4, 1 to 4. Hey, you're more and more willing to supply because you supply it. Right? This is all that we talk about. So I'm gonna ask you a question just based on these numbers here. Let's take a look very carefully. Where do you think the equilibrium price is? Because at some point, both these people are going to cross, right? Both line. This is coming down, this is going up. So at some point they're gonna cross. So now the question is, by just looking at this, see how observant you are? Where do you think the equilibrium price is? Where do you think the equilibrium quantity is? I'll take a guess. Are you raising your hand, Mr. Matthews?
Nah, I straight.
Okay, you just,
I think it's 4 and 2 and 4 and 8.
4 and 8, is that what you say?
Oh, well, never mind.
I'm hearing something.
Yeah, 4
Maybe
and
I'm-
8.
4 is what? The price? What is the equilibrium price, you think? Where they both
2.
cross? Okay, 2 is good guess. Any other guess?
3.
Okay, 3 is a good guess too. How about in between?
2.5.
2.5. Okay, what about quantity? What do you think? 2, 4, 6, 8, 8, 6, 4, 2. What's a meter?
5.
A meter is 5. Okay, let's see if you're right. Okay. These are ugly, right? I mean, mine's a little bit easier. This is really so many squares here. But anyway, where the two lines cross here, the equilibrium price is $2.50. Exactly between $2 and $3. Halfway, actually. Midpoint. So right here would be 5, because again, that's where the middle is. So equilibrium price $2.50, equilibrium quantity is 5 or 5,000 slices of pizza per day. Any questions so far? So this seems like a little bit straightforward. Okay, so that's how we find it. Calculus, skip. So we skip calculus. Okay, what is the opposite of, you don't need calculus. I don't know why that was there for my other classes, I think. More advanced class. What is the opposite of equilibrium? What do you think? If there's a balance, it has to be
Unbalanced.
imbalance. If there's stability, it has to be a instability. If there's an equilibrium, there has to be a,
Odds are equal.
did I hear unequilibrium? Okay, the wood is disequilibrium. That's the opposite. What is disequilibrium? There are two examples. One is excess demand, where quantity demanded is greater than quantity supply. We have another term for it, it's called shortages, excess demand. The second example is called excess supply. And the term for it is called surplus. Some of you have heard about the term Army surplus store. What exactly is an Army surplus store? What do they have? They have surpluses. Too much supply. So quantity supply is greater than quantity demanded. More than what they needed. Okay, so there are two situations here. So we're going to look at the first case, which is our excess supply or surplus. And we want to look at example of example here is minimum wages law, actually. So let's look at the labor market, everybody. So please draw this graph with me so you can understand. Okay, so this is a labor market, not the product market like pizza. This is like, labor market, so you have a demand for labor, supply of labor. Okay, and right here is the equilibrium wages per hour. It's a unit or price, but since we're talking about labor market, and the y-axis typically show the values of the market. In this case, it's wages per hour. And down here is employment or numbers of workers employed. It's the same thing. Okay, I'll put in parentheses. So there, let's say this is 500. Let's say this is $6 per hour. So that's a market price, and that's the, at market price of $6 per hour, there are 500 people who are willing to work and 500 jobs available. So this is the equilibrium where the quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So, this is demand, excuse me, so which is 500. That's when everybody's happy. Okay, you have equilibrium right here at 500. Quantity supply equals quantity demanded. Now, everybody knows there's this thing called minimum wages. And according to the minimum wages law, at least in North Carolina, how much is it? $7 and 25 cents per hour. I'm gonna draw a line. Let's say that this has already been imposed, and we call this price floor. Now, I want you to think about the word floor for a second. I'm stepping on floors now. So if I do like that, the floor is still there, you know, unless I'm really strong, I poke through the wall. Poke through the floor, excuse me, I'm talking about the floor. So the floor is the minimum, correct? That's the lowest I could go. So remember, when we say floor, we're talking about minimum. So what is happening here is the essence behind this minimum wages law is because at $6 per hour, people are not happy. They're still not happy, even though that's a market wages, according to this graph. So the essence of having this minimum wages is to help teenagers to earn a little bit more if you work in McDonald's. So they raise it to $7.25. So we draw a line here. So right here, drop it down. This is 700. You drop this down. This is let's say this is 300. So in other words, your quantity, this is demand, because demanded is now 300. The quantity supply is 700. Okay, so you're in this situation because your quantity supply is greater than quantity demanded. That's 700 versus 300, right? That's why you have surplus. So the line between here and here, what is a number? What should the number be between the QS and QD? 700 and 300. So what should that line be? 400. Everybody okay with that? So this distance here will be 700 minus 300, which is 400. We call this surplus labor. A fancy word for it will be unemployed workers. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that when you raise the minimum wages to $7.25 per hour, there will be a lot more people who wanted the job. So now the quantity supply, or the number of people who say, yeah, I am, take me, I'm available to work, it's more, expanded from 500 to 700. What about McDonald's? The producer, they're not as happy. Guess what? They have to fork out more now, right? So they're only willing to give out 300 jobs instead of previously 500. So quantity demanded actually come down, quantity supply shoots up. So now we have a disequilibrium, so 700 minus 300 is 400. So here it is, we call this surplus labor. So there are people who got displaced. How many of them? About 200, because 500 minus 300 is 200. There's 200 people now didn't get a job because of this minimum wages being imposed, whereas before they got the job. Okay, so in other words, a law, any given law, in this case minimum wages law, has unintended effects. The intention is to help the teenagers. Yes, there are people who got help. How many of them got help? Very good, you're understanding what's going on. 300 people got it at $7.25, but then at the expense of 200 people being displaced. Well, not quite at the expense. Well, yeah, they got hired and then they have to lay off 200 workers there. So then the argument for it is always like this, any given law, any given government position for anything is always like that. that you, this is talking about pizza here, but then there's another example for minimum wages, which is this one. But we don't have to worry about that. I think my diagram is sufficient here if you take note, because this is a little bit more detailed. Now, so what happened is, yes, the law always try to help people. So yes, 300 people got help. However, unintentionally or inadvertently, that 200 people got displaced. So 200 people got harmed. That's always what we call government intervention. This is an example of a government intervention. Sometimes produces some inefficiency. So I want to ask you a question here. So since we are talking about minimum or price floor, let me ask you a question. See how much you really understand the term minimum. Now, if McDonald's want to pay you at, say, $10 per hour that is above you, I could draw a pink line or whatever, is that okay? Would it violate this law?
No.
Not at all, right? If you want to go up, there's no limit. You want to offer $20 per hour, $10 per hour, it's fine. Be my guest. But the minute you're going to drop it down to $7.25, you are violating the law. So there's no limit on top. No law say you cannot offer above minimum wages. By all means you can, but you just cannot offer below. So that comes back to a very important point. I hope you write it down. In order for minimum wages or price floor, general term, to be effective, you have to impose a minimum. Above the equilibrium. Make sense? Now, if you impose it below the equilibrium wages, like $5 per hour, what happened? There's no effects. You're not helping anybody. So we might as well go back to the market wages. So in other words, the price floor only makes sense if you impose it above the equilibrium. If you impose it below, I say, oh, boo, go back and take your ECN 2020 class, because then we just go with the market wages. Why do we need law like that? That does not make sense. Does not help anybody. And it's not effective. You get voted out if you ask for that kind of law. So in order for minimum wages or price floor to be effective, you have to impose it above the minimum, above the equilibrium. So another example is the excess demand. I will not draw the diagram because I won't have time. So I'm just going to explain this. This is a housing market. Another problem now. Second one, which I'm just going to use this to explain, okay? This one is explaining about the shortages. So in this case, you want to look at housing market, like 2-bedroom apartment, for example. So this is an example. You might want to write this down. What we call price ceiling instead of price floor now. So if you look at ceiling, it's the maximum, right? The highest you could go. An example is rent control. So let's just say that your, I think it's in your textbook. Oh yeah, right here. Excuse me. So the equilibrium price or rent, looking at housing market, 2-bedroom apartment. So the monthly rent for the market price is $1,600 for 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, the quantity demanded and supply is 2 million. So you want to impose something called rent control because you say, oh yeah, $1,600 per room per month rent, it's too expensive for college kids. So we want to help them. So we impose something called rent control. Anybody from New York City? Okay, there is such a thing called rent control in New York City. So what they do is they impose a law. The law says that it's going to be $800 for 2-bedroom apartment, maximum. In other words, you could drop it down to below 800, like 500, not a problem. As long as you make sure that there are 4 walls, there's a roof above it, go for it. Now, if they want to charge above it, is that okay? No. It's not okay because the maximum is 800. Now the 800, you draw a line across, you look, this is 3, quantity demanded is 3. More people want an apartment now because, hey, it's a lot cheaper, lower than the market price. However, the landlord are not willing, the supply side, the supplier of two-bedroom apartment is only willing to supply 1 million unit. So you have excess demand here for shortages by 2 million. So that's what happened there. And once again, I want to point out this point that if you impose it above the equilibrium, it doesn't work, like say 2,400. You know, it is not helping anybody. So in order for this price ceiling to work, you have to impose it below the market price or market rate, rent in this case, which is $800. So be sure you read this out on Friday. I'll continue with the example. Thank you for coming. And don't forget, we have the extra credit session tomorrow if you show up. It's not mandatory, it's voluntary. And then, of course, this afternoon, 2:30 to 5, if you want to go over that test questions with the tutor, be sure you be there, and BA 113.